When I first heard of Albion Online, I was really intrigued by the idea of it being a sandbox MMORPG, and back in 2015 I created a few videos for the game when it first went into early alpha. Now recently the developers of it reached out and asked if I wanted to go ahead and create a sponsored video for them to explain to you what the game is all about, and that's exactly what I am doing today. So just for transparency's sake, I do want to let you know that indeed this is a sponsored video, but of course I'm going to be giving you my honest opinion now that the Galahad update is live, which is the final stage before the release of Albion Online. So over the last couple of days, I've been spending quite a few hours into the game already, and I've been thinking about the easiest way to explain to you what it's all about. And I think that the most straightforward way is just by simply starting up a new character. Here's the thing, right? It's an MMORPG that basically means that you can do whatever you please after you get your way out of the starting zone. Now, we'll get started right here by creating a new avatar. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably one of the worst aspects of this game. I'm not gonna, make it sound any better than it is, because the character creation process really isn't very unique whatsoever. Definitely nothing to write home about. You can choose if you want to be a man or a woman. I guess I'm gonna play a male right here. And you can also, change the underwear that you're wearing, as well as the color of said underwear. Other than that, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and pick up a nickname and get started right here with Lokers. So here we are in Albion Online. Now this is not a game that holds your hand when you first log in, okay? It can be a little bit overwhelming. Instead, in the top right corner, it gives you a suggestion of what you should probably get started with. But honestly, after you get past this first little island, you can already start switching it up and you can really do whatever you please. Now first off, it's telling me to gather 3 rough logs, and that really is the basis, I suppose, of the early game when it comes to Albion. You need to make sure that you gather a lot of resources, and initially you can do so by just simply clicking on the tree, but of course very shortly we will be unlocking tools as well. Now, while a lot of this game is all about player versus player and a whole lot about combat as well, for the most part, you're gonna be spending a lot of time doing gathering. So if you do not enjoy that aspect of an MMORPG, you are probably going to want to skip this one. I personally am a massive fan of that. I actually really enjoyed playing RuneScape back in the day. I played that for probably about 7 to 8 years or so, like a ridiculous amount of time. And this game is sort of giving me a similar kind of vibe. It's all about gathering a lot of resources and refining those after the fact. Now you can notice right here, now in the top right corner, it says craft a beginner's skinning knife. So the way you go ahead and do so is by walking up to a blacksmith or one of these anvils, and you can go ahead and get started right here with creating a bunch of these tools. Now, from what I remember, the UI in the game was not particularly strong, and apparently recently they overhauled the entire process. It looks significantly better right now. So we get started right here by creating ourselves a beginner's skinning knife, which I can now craft because of the items that I've gathered. There we go. I got one. Now, I've currently got it equipped here as well. The way I can now use it is by killing a rabbit or a marmot, apparently, such as, for example, this one right here. We can kill that. It's giving us a lot of upgrades. But right from the get-go, I'm going to be able to skin this animal and therefore obtain its hide. So right now, as you can see, I've got 2 of them, and my current objective is to go up to 8. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time killing a few more of these. So an assignment that I've just completed was to craft a beginner's mercenary jacket, and every single piece of gear, as well as the weapons in the game, come with different kinds of spells. Now the first one that I just unlocked only comes with a single one, but later on we'll have to make some choices here. So as you can see, only 1 spell can be active per row, and as you can see, well, I've only got 1 row available on the beginner's mercenary jacket. Now the spell that I unlocked is called Mend Wounds, and it now also shows up here at the bottom part of the screen. As long as you are not in combat, you can use this spell to mend your wounds. And basically, I can activate it right like that, and it will start regenerating a bunch of HP. My next assignment is to go ahead and craft a beginner's broadsword. So the way we gotta figure out how to do that is by once more going to the anvil and figuring out how much we need for it. And as you can see, I currently do not have enough resources to grab that and to go ahead and create one. So we'll have to make sure that we spend a little bit of time gathering some more stuff. And really, gathering is like the basis of this game, okay? Like, the entire player economy is based around gathering a lot of items. You can indeed sell a lot of stuff in, for example, the auction house. You can make sure that you get a lot of stuff back that way. But for the most part, you're going to be spending, at least initially, a lot of hours on gathering a lot of the equipment. So once again, I'm spending some time here gathering a lot of the resources. And one thing you may notice here is that it shows a little number of 1 whenever I am trying to gather something. So right here, for example, when I click on these rocks, you may notice it says right there the number 1. And that's a really big aspect of the early game of Albion Online. It basically shows you the tier of the item that you're trying to gather. Now, initially, of course, we're starting up at tier 1, but very shortly we will be moving through the ranks here as well. Meaning that the longer we play, the stronger our gear and whatnot will become. So there's really not necessarily like a leveling process involved. Instead, you unlock a lot of the items and you can unlock a lot of the equipment by completing tasks on the Destiny board. Now, the Destiny board is giving me a bit of a Path of Exile kind of vibe. And basically what it shows you is all of the things that I've currently got unlocked. Now, since we are still at the very beginning of the game, I've only really unlocked right here the bottom lines so far. My next objective is indeed to go ahead and create a beginner's broadsword. But very shortly, we can start branching out into all of the different directions. So say, for example, I enjoy mining a lot and I really enjoy being a gatherer. I can go ahead and specialize in that aspect of the game. And literally every single part of this will give you more and more depth to your character. Now, this does automatically mean as well that since there is not necessarily a level to go ahead and create any of the items, you do need to make sure that you've got the unlocked tier available to you. So say, for example, while I could obtain one of these quivers and one of these novice bows from the auction house, I cannot actually use it until I unlock this tier in the Destiny board here as well. So while the game isn't necessarily holding your hand here initially, it is giving you a lot of information about what you can potentially unlock and where you might want to go ahead and take your character. Now, eventually, once you master the game, you're gonna be getting the achievement right here of the Elder Adventurer, but I guess that will take a little bit of time. Now, one thing that I remember to be very, very different is indeed the world map. So first off, it shows you all of the different cities and zones that you can explore. So of course, this is one of the major attractions of the game. Since it is indeed a sandbox MMORPG, there are simply just a ton of different things that you can look at and a ton of different terrains that you can discover. Now, one really cool part about the game that I initially didn't understand when I first started off is that all of the different zones have their separate economies and their separate bank spaces as well. For example, right, if you would want to travel all the way from Wold over towards Trimley here in the top right corner of the map, I would actually go through a bunch of different zones. Now, interestingly enough, the zones do indeed have their separate economies. What that means is that, for example, if you stash a bunch of items in the bank over at Wold, they will not be available over in Trimley. Meaning that if you know that an item in Trimley will be significantly more pricey than it is in Wold, you might want to risk making the trip over to that area. Now, that does mean that, first off, you're gonna have to spend quite a bit of time traveling, but secondly, you're gonna go through PvP types of area. Meaning that if you want to take the risk of, potentially obtaining a bigger reward over in Trimley, you're gonna have to fight off a couple of different players. At that point, we indeed arrive at the PvP aspect of it. A lot of these areas will indeed be controlled by guilds as well. You're gonna be passing through their terrain. Now, if you die, you will drop all of the items that you're carrying with you, or at the very least, the vast majority of it, meaning that you have to sort of choose your risks and your rewards wisely. Anyway, for now, that goes a little bit over our heads. We'll go ahead and create some additional gear here instead. Of course, I want to make sure that I grab as many of these items as I possibly can. So there we go. I equip some boots here as well, which will unlock a new spell for me called, well, let's have a look at it. Sprint. Increases your movement speed by 100% for 3 seconds, which once again, just to clarify, right, it's bound to the gear that I've got equipped. Now, if I were to go ahead and equip my sword just like that as well, this is the first item where I will need to choose one of the spells that's available. So I can go ahead and pick the beginner's strike right here, or I could pick the beginner's cleave. Now, generally speaking, single target damage seems a little bit more efficient, at least initially, so I'll go ahead and make sure to pick that one up right here as well. Now, of course, the new weapon that I got available here is going to be much more efficient at slaying a lot of these dudes. We can now indeed kill them very easily, not that they were particularly difficult opponents here earlier. But regardless, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here slaying everything that I can find in this area before heading out to the next zone, as I do want to try and craft as much as I possibly can before moving onwards. So I've spent some time gathering some resources, and now I'm getting a full set of tier 1 items. And what I'm going to use those for is to start gathering higher tier items here as well. So as you can see right now, I got a beginner's axe, a beginner's skinning knife, stone hammer, pickaxe, and sickle. So not only the resources that we gather have got a number to indicate the tier level, but also so do the different kinds of gathering tools. So one thing you may notice right here is that my axe says the number 1. That means that Cutting down a tier 1 tree will be much easier, but more importantly, I can now also go ahead and start cutting down a tier 2 tree, which I cannot do with my bare hands. Now that I have obtained a full set of tier 1 as well as all of the gathering items that I need, it is time for us to move onwards because the starting zone doesn't really have a whole lot for me to offer. So now we're gonna make our way to the very first little town. Now, of course, in this area, we will also be able to see all kinds of different players. Of course, they will be shown right there with little, like, name tags above their heads. As you can see, there's quite a few people online right now. But the first thing you'll notice is that there are a lot of different things that we can do over here. So this very first basic anvil, I suppose, is a copy from the one that we've already seen before. However, the second one right behind him will already show us the tier 2 sword, as well as the tier 2 shield, and for that matter, also tier 3, and some of the gear here as well. And really, we can start unlocking those here as well. So say, for example, I wanted to get myself a novice broadsword. The way I would go about getting that is by getting myself copper bars as well as stiff leather. Now, of course, I cannot go out into the world and simply gather copper bars. That's not a thing. I can indeed mine the ore for it, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and refine it. The same goes for the leather. If I want to get myself the stiff leather, I'm gonna have to slay the tier 2 animals in order to obtain that. So we'll have a quick look around town and see what else is available. Secondly, what we got over here is indeed the Novice Fire Staff, as well as the Novice Tomb of Spell, as well as a full set right here of tier 2 Mage's Gear, and I think that's what I'm gonna try and obtain today. So the goal for today's video is to try and get to the point where we've got 16 birch planks, as well as 8 copper bars. I'm gonna say 16, nope, we need 8 copper bars, and I also want to make sure that I get myself the simple cloth, as well as the stiff leather. The same goes, of course, right here for the Scholar's Cowl, as well as the rope, as well as the sandals. Now here's how we will go about gathering the equipment. First off, we will go out into the world, gain up to 100% equipment load, or maybe a little bit under. As you can see right now, we are at 21%. If you go over 100%, you will be slowed down quite a bit. We'll come back to town with all of the raw gathering materials. We'll refine those at the different kind of vendors that are available, and then we'll craft whatever we can. Now, one important thing to note is that, of course, I want to go out into the world with as little equipment load as I possibly can. So I'm just going to keep the gathering tools here with me, and then it's time for me to head out. So it doesn't really matter exactly where we want to go here next. Of course, you know what, I can actually, I'll go to the top left corner just so I can show you a different biome as well. But regardless, it doesn't really matter all too much where you go here initially, because, you know, all of the different areas that will be available, as you can see right here on the mini-map, there's really like 4 different paths to one leading back to the starting zone. There's really like 3 different paths that I can take, and they will all really contain the same kind of items here initially. Now, the first zones that we get to, right, and as you can see, this one is luscious and green. The first zones that we get to are all going to be pretty straightforward and PvE focused. Right here, you cannot fight with any kind of players, just because it's still so early on into the game, right? But the more you venture out into the world, the more dangerous it will become as well. Now here's the thing, right? A lot of this game is about gathering new and better items. You will be spending a lot of time crafting and, you know, finding new and better resources, right? And that automatically means that this game is not for everyone. If you do not enjoy that aspect of it, it's going to be very difficult for you to enjoy this game as well. Now, there is, of course, you know, combat involved here as well. I can go ahead and fight this dude right here, the Wild Scavenger, quite easily with the weapons that I've got right now. Of course, I can go ahead and use the spell here as well that I obtained earlier, and that way I can, you know, see what he's got with him and potentially loot him as well. Now, I'm not really too bothered by that, but here's the thing, right? The combat is definitely also not the most exciting thing in the game. While I have to be careful that I don't die here, and initially it seems like the enemies are a little bit spongy, the later we get into the game, the more exciting I suppose the combat will be, but it's nowhere near as exciting as some of the other modern titles out there. I would say that if you want to play this game exclusively for, you know, and I actually need to make sure that I loot them. If you want to play this game exclusively for the PvP, it's also a little tricky to recommend. Because if you really want to enjoy that aspect of it, there are probably better games out there to just simply enjoy that aspect more. But if you like the combination of, you know, gathering and progressing onwards into the world, and even starting up your own player housing and whatnot, there is definitely a lot of potential for this game. Now, one of the things you may also notice is that there are indeed these dungeons available, and I can climb down into this one. I'm not entirely sure if I actually have got enough equipment, but there is quite a little bit of exploration that you can go ahead and do. We can actually have a quick look at it, I suppose, and see if we can gather some more items here. But already the second item, or the second dude that we come across here, the Wild Thief, will be someone that we have to be a little bit careful with. Alright, so I'm fighting this stronger mob right here. I guess I'm gonna stay in this dungeon. Ooh, and you can see actually he was casting something. I'm gonna stay in this dungeon until I reach my trainee fighter, which is currently at 165 out of 200 points. I'm gonna have to kill a couple more of these dudes before we will unlock this. And of course need to make sure that I don't die, because dying would be kind of bad. Regardless, we'll stay here for just a little while longer before moving onwards into the world. There we go. We got it completed. Which now means that I can indeed equip some new items and continue onward. So you can see right now, I will be able to use that level 2 broadsword. So the one resource I was really trying to obtain was indeed the cotton, just so I could go ahead and craft my own robes, right? However, the area I was just in apparently didn't really have a whole lot of it, and I came back with a lot of birch logs right here, as well as a bunch of copper ore. Now, next up, it's important for us to go ahead and refine the tools that we've got, or the resources that we found. So I am gonna go ahead and craft the birch planks here, which I can go ahead and do so by just simply going to the vendor. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but there you can see the logs that I got are now switched over to planks. Now, one of the nice things about the very first starting zones that you get to is that oftentimes they will have some resources available. For example, right there you can see some of the ores right next to the smith. And I'm actually currently on a little bit of cotton hoarding task, I suppose. I'm trying to get all of those before some other people can try and grab them here. That way I should be capable of crafting all of the equipment that I want very, very shortly. Now, of course, just like I did with the logs, I can also go ahead and refine the simple cloth that I already had found. There we go. Next up, I want to do the exact same thing right here for the ores that we found too. So I'm going to be crafting myself some of these copper bars. So I just crafted a full set of tier 2 items here, and you can see that they're currently still red. I can already obtain them, and I could even buy like higher tier items as well, but I cannot quite use them until I unlock this achievement right here in the destiny board. So right here you can see it says gather tier 2 resources up to this point right here. I can only go ahead and start using the tools that I just crafted after I obtain that item. So that means that while you may be able to buy higher tier items in the auction house much earlier than you can use them, they're not gonna be very useful until you unlock the achievement in the destiny board. So for the time being, I'm gonna go ahead and dump all of the stuff that I've got into my stash, and then it's time to head out into the world. This time around, I'll go to the, I guess this would be the southeast. And as you can see, cotton does indeed grow right outside of the gate here. So I was looking around, while I was looking around in the other area for a little while, oftentimes just simply going to a different zone is going to be much more beneficial. Now, of course, in the later stages of the game, right, you're going to be crafting much more rare resources as well. So making the travel across the different areas, knowing that some resources may, for example, be really expensive over here that are really cheap elsewhere, can definitely be worth the risk. It's kind of a cool concept that really allows you to you know, it really allows you to think very closely and clearly about what you want to do and where you want to be taking your risks and who you want to be grouping up with as well. So I did indeed just unlock the achievement on the destiny board, meaning that I can now go ahead and use my tier 2 items, and that automatically means that I can now also gather the tier 3 resources, which I could previously not even obtain. So for example, I could not gather tin ore until just now. Now that I've got my level 2 pickaxe ready to go, I can now start gathering tier 3 resources. Very good. Alright, so I've come back to town, I dumped all of the stuff in my stash, I refined the resources that I needed, and it's time to upgrade from a full tier 1 set to a full tier 2 set instead. So we'll be focusing right here on becoming a mage. I'll go ahead and craft my novice fire staff, which I can now indeed craft. I'll go ahead and get a Tomb of Spells here as well. We'll make sure to get the Novice Scholar Cowl, as well as the robe, as well as the sandals. And I guess it's time for us to go ahead and equip these here as well. So of course, these are mage's items, right? That means that they will indeed come with different kinds of spells and different kinds of abilities. I'm not going to be able to, for example, use my healing anymore that I previously had set up. And instead, I'm going to get other stuff here, you know, in place of it. So for example, I can go ahead and unlock Firebolt here or Firebomb. And I think I once again got to pick the single target damage here. The same goes for all of these other stuff. I, for example, now have a Force Field, knocks back all enemies around you. I certainly can't use it over here. I've also now can choose... Oh, I can actually still choose Mend Wounds. I didn't realize that, but regardless, I can now still, you know, choose another spell here as well called Frost Shield. Increase your armor and magic resist by 65 for 8 seconds. Enemies that attack you are slowed down. I guess I'm just gonna go with the Mend Wounds though, because it's still very helpful. And, you know, you can see we're slowly upgrading to better and better gear. And of course, just to showcase what it looks like, these items will become significantly more powerful. So let me actually go ahead and stash the stuff that I got right here, and then we'll head out into the world and do some fighting. Now, of course, as you may have already noticed, right, this game is very, very grindy in the sense that you're gonna have to do a lot of repetitive tasks. And some of you may really enjoy that, and others may not. Of course, that is personal preference. Me, myself, I actually really don't mind it. It's just that there are so many games out there nowadays to play that it's pretty difficult to go ahead and commit myself to a single game. But if you are looking for, like, one game to play, and you really enjoy the grindy aspect, I would say Albion Online is definitely one to consider. And by the way, as you can see, my gear, indeed, is significantly more powerful than what we had previously, and we can nuke down these things very, very easily. Now, of course, right, since this is a sandbox title, that means that there is simply so much more stuff to do that I cannot show you in just a single video. When you first get started, however, this is what you should expect and what the game is all about, at the very least initially. Later on, you will be able to start doing PvP as well, but first off, it's all about the resource gathering and upgrading your gear slowly over time. One of the things, though, that I can tell you now that I've played the game for a fair share of hours is that I kind of wish that the game would be sped up by, you know, maybe 50% or so. I think it would be much more enjoyable if it was a little bit faster paced, because both the combat as well as the gathering as well as the walking and whatnot, it's all a little bit slow. So maybe that's just a critique that I personally have, but it definitely could be sped up a little to my liking. Now, last but not least, let's talk about the payment model for this game and how they are earning money. So first off, currently the game is pay to play. So if you want to try out the game, there's a link down below in the description of the video where you can buy the game and test it out, and you will get all kinds of benefits from being a founder. However, on top of that, you can also buy in-game gold, which I don't really like all too much. Of course, you gotta keep in mind that you still need to unlock all of the stuff on the Destiny board, but I'm not a big fan of that movement. And on top of that, you can also unlock a premium status that allows you to gain, you know, resources and level ups a little bit faster, which I also feel like is a little bit too much. However, it's totally doable to play the game with just, you know, the box set, I suppose, but still, I'm not a big fan of also allowing, like, premium gains just to, like, make your character level up a little bit faster, because I always feel like I am going to be behind, you know, of other players that are also playing at the same time if I were not to have that premium status available. I think this game caters to a very specific audience. You can indeed play this on tablet and whatnot, but it really doesn't change up much about the fact of the game that it's, you know, very, very grindy, at the very least initially in my playthroughs so far. You're gonna have to simply enjoy the process of gathering a lot of resources, refining them, and progressing onwards. But at the same time, it's one of those games that is very enjoyable if you do enjoy that aspect of it. I just see that, you know, I can just imagine that a lot of people will just simply not enjoy that aspect and would rather play something that is a little bit more action-packed, which I can completely understand. At the same time, though, if you are someone like myself that does enjoy that grind, and someone who maybe has got some nostalgic feelings to, for example, RuneScape, where you had a very, very similar kind of aspect, you know, I think you are absolutely going to love a game like this. Anyway, that is going to be my first look at Albion Online. About an hour or so of playtime, and this is where you should end up yourself as well. If you've got any questions, let me know down below in the comment section of the video. I'll try and keep an eye out on it. On top of that, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload new videos. I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.